Welcome into the New Orleans Saints Postgame Show presented by Verizon. I'm Carolyn Gonzalez, joined by Mike Haas here in the studio. As your New Orleans Saints finish the regular season with a win over the Carolina Panthers, 42-10 to advance on the season. Now, everyone's keeping their eyes on this Green Bay Packers versus Detroit Lions game. They are all tied up right now, 20-20 with 1 minute and 20 seconds left in the game. It's 1st and 10. Green Bay has the ball. I know we have to talk a little bit about this Carolina Panthers and Saints game, but we have been keeping eyes on this game because it has huge implications for the Saints and their seeding.
It does in their seeding. Should the Packers win, the Packers are the number 1 seed.
Okay.
Should the Lions win, the Saints would automatically be the 2 seed, but still in line to get that 1st seed, depending on what happens tonight.
Right.
Seattle and San Francisco. One thing at a time.
Yep.
The Saints did what they had to do. Sean Payton's birthday, you go into Carolina, and you take it from the opening drive. Carolina wins the toss, defers, gives Drew Brees and that offense the ball, and they just motor down the field like it was a script. Never faced a 3rd down, went up 7-0, and truly behind the play of their defense, which got 3 turnovers, never looked back, and just did what you have to do on the road. They're now 7-1, won 7 of their last 7 games on the road to finish that season 13-3. Wow, what a very impressive game today all around.
Absolutely, Mike. And like you said, they kind of took over from the very beginning of the game. It never really seemed like they let off the gas pedal. And we'll be hearing from Sean Payton and quarterback Drew Brees shortly. And we'll get them over to the podium we'll get you over to the podium as soon as we can. But like I said, Mike, it seemed like the Saints had complete control over this game from the very start. You saw them hit a number of receivers right out the bat for this game.
Drew ended up hitting 9 different receivers throughout the day. Will Greer and the Carolina offense, the first quarter was 3 and outs. At the end of the first quarter, the Saints had 12 first downs. The Panthers had 14 yards. And so it was Will Greer on the day was 1 of 8, 4 yards. He had a pick 6. So last week he had 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and then the pick 6 by A.J. Klein, who got back at his former team, gets his first career touchdown, his 3rd interception. Since he has come back, he has been a force and has really helped Demario Davis and that linebacking core play exceptionally well. So they got a fumble recovery by Malcolm Brown and then a late pick by Janoris Jenkins. So 3 turnovers today. So they finished the season plus 15 in that very important turnover margin, and just did it with offense, efficiency, and defense just drowned them out. I mean, it was 35-3 at halftime.
Yeah.
Largest lead ever in franchise history. And really that was because Carolina kicked a field goal at in the waning seconds of the first half. Just what you wanted to have to finish this off in a game that did mean something. The Saints have played a lot of games in Carolina and with Carolina, 7 times to end the season in the Sean Payton era that have just really not mattered. Today did, because you are playing for seeding, and to go in and win 42-10, and it was never really that close.
And as I'm looking for Sean Payton, I realize this game is probably going on, and I'm sure him and Mickey Loomis and Gil Benson are all crowded around a TV trying to see the finish of this game as there's 33 seconds left. It's 1st and 10 at the Detroit 20, so we'll keep you updated on that game. But speaking of injuries, it was good to get A.J. Klein back. It's good to start getting some of these linebackers back for this defense. You got Kiko Alonso back this week, but they did have an injured secondary. You had no Eli Apple, no Marcus Williams, no Von Bell today for the Saints team.
So what Coach Payton had talked about earlier, what that does is gives more snaps to these people, more snaps to Janoris Jenkins, more snaps than he maybe would have probably wanted to get last week in that victory against the Titans. But so, it's kind of the double-edged sword. Every team is facing it in Week 17, and he played very well, gets the pick. At the end, he's been in a couple of plays, special teams-wise as well. So I think it just gives him that much more confidence to come in and get some plays. And you and I have talked about the difference that Jared Cook has made on this football team. What a spectacular catch that he made today. And he's just been that receiver, that Drew now really, I think, believes in. And when was the last time that anybody can think of that Michael Thomas was not the leading receiver.
Right. It seemed like they were really doubling Michael Thomas today. It seemed like they wanted an emphasis on limiting him for whatever reason, because obviously you want to limit Michael Thomas, but the Saints team just has so many other offensive weapons. You mentioned Jared Cook. You saw a little bit of Josh Hill there at the beginning of the game, and Traquan Smith.
Right. He was your leading receiver. Traquan Smith with 5 catches. You know, Michael Thomas played a key role almost really in getting interfered with.
Yeah.
Had the huge interference call that was overturned, you know, that was not called on the field, turned into an interference and ended up being a Saints touchdown. So, but, you know, not a huge game, but lots of targets to Michael Thomas. But you know what? I guess we just get so spoiled.
Yeah.
I kind of flipped that around to me, because I've always felt that we need to get a Traquan Smith. We need to get these other guys involved more in this offense, so that the DBs have to play a little more kind of fair, so to speak. So, and I think you saw a little bit of that today. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to judge the Carolina Panthers at this juncture. I mean, a team just, you know.
So much happening on
Yeah.
that team. I taught Jared Cook how to do that one-hand
You
snap,
did?
so, by the way. So,
Pretty good.
Credit to me
Pretty
for
good.
that.
7 touchdowns in his last 8 games. So he has 9 touchdowns. Had he gotten another one, he would have had 10, and that would been the first time since 2014 and Jimmy Graham that a tight end had double-digit touchdowns. And when you think about Jared Cook, you remember he missed some time to injury. That's all come in the last really 7-8 weeks.
Yeah,
So he has really turned it on in the last few weeks. And just, you know, what do you say about Drew Brees? You know, he was 19 of 30, 253 yards, but 3 touchdowns. So he had 24 TDs coming into today. So now he has his 14th season with at least 25 touchdowns or more. Ties, Tom Brady, still chasing Payton Manning, but just, you know, just amazing for him to 3 touchdowns. Probably not his most crisp performance, but do what you got to do.
And no signs of slowing down for Drew Brees. Now there is 3 seconds remaining in the game. It's 2020, as I mentioned, 4th and 5 at the Detroit 15. So you have to imagine that the Packers are going to kick a field goal to go up 23-20 to defeat the Lions, which, as you mentioned earlier, will make them the 1 seed. So you're really banking on the game later tonight against the 49ers and Seahawks.
And it's good. And it's over. So I mean, we were counting on a 3-11-1 Lions team to beat the Packers, and they were up 14-0 and played. They had many opportunities to really. They had 17 points at halftime and couldn't put anything up on the board except for 3 points in the second half. That's the game, because Aaron Rodgers was 27 of 55. 27 of 55, 323. His quarterback rating was 72. So you got what you wanted.
Right.
An off day from the Packers. But asking a lot of the Lions. So doesn't mean that everything has to go through Green Bay. It means it could go through Green Bay. So that's why tonight we are all Seattle Seahawks fans, as a Seahawks victory will give the Saints the number 2 seed. Now it's about the bye. You know, and it's about getting that bye and not having to play. And technically it would be the 11th or the 12th. My thought is the NFL is going to put the Saints on the 11th, because there's a college football game now on the 13th.
It's a kind of important one.
LSU and Clemson. So I'm thinking they're going to want to give the Mercedes-Benz Superdome just that much time to flip a field from, you know, those 2 games. But you just never know. Television and money dominates everything.
Right.
But that is now the key. Do not play next weekend. Seattle wins tonight. The Saints do not play next weekend.
And I think it's huge to get that bye week, because you do have some injuries, as we discussed earlier in the secondary. You just got Andrews Pete back. You got Larry Warford back. Now you're just looking to get guys healthy, give guys an extra week of rest going into that next week game. So hopefully you get the bye, as you mentioned, and we're all Seahawks fans. Now, as we wait for head coach Sean Payton, Mike, let me get your take on the Seahawks signing Marshawn Lynch this week. What do you think about that?
You know, well, they were desperate. They had, I mean, you know, again, it's week 17. You just lose so many people to injuries.
Right.
So and I was like, Marshawn Lynch. I was like, my gosh, it's been so long. So because I remember Marshawn Lynch in 2011, that January 8th game against the Saints in the playoffs. The Saints were 11-5. They go to Seattle, and it looks like Sean's getting him up. And Marshawn rushes 19 times, 131 yards, and that's where he kind of that beast mode mentality. And I'm going, my gosh, it's 2019. He's back, re-signs this week, because they were just a depleted running back situation in Seattle. So it's in Seattle. San Francisco's a very good defense. It'll be a very key game. But we've seen teams in the last couple of weeks that need to win. Minnesota needed to win the other night at home against the Packers. The Dolphins went into New England and beat the Patriots in games that mattered. KC was behind, came back against the Chargers. So in the end, when Atlanta went to San Francisco and won. Call it parity, call it run. On any given Sunday, it can happen because we see it all the time. The Lions almost came back, stayed ahead long enough to defeat the Packers, but they didn't.
Any given Sunday, indeed, as the New Orleans Saints defeat the Carolina Panthers today, 42-10. And as we've kind of joked internally about Sean Payton and Drew Brees saying the same thing. You want to be ascending going into playoffs. It really seems like the Saints team is ascending, and I'm going to do the hand motion every time I say the word. As they go into the playoffs, what do you think about the longevity of this Saints team right now, with where they're at?
I think they're right where they want to be. They're putting more points on the board than they were the first part of the season. Today was the 200th regular season game for Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Their 200th regular season game behind number 1, Belichick and Tom Brady at 281. And now let's check with Sean Payton.
Any questions? Thought there were a lot of good things. Was pleased with. I thought early on, we got out and took advantage of some of the field position, created field position, and did all the things that you need to do to win a game like this. So, anything?
Can you speak more on the fast start you had? Because I know when you come in a game like this, a team that doesn't have much to play for in Carolina, you kind of want.
Well, look, we tried to focus really on playing our best game. In really each of these call it the last quarter of the season, really preparing to play playoff football, and I thought we started fast, so that was encouraging.
So how do you like how we're playing right now?
Look, I think good. I was pleased with the second half of last week. I was pleased with how we started this game.
Did you guys take a minute to watch the
We watched the end of that. It was on one of the TVs in there. Obviously a close game. We'll see what happens tonight. And look, those are things you can't control, so we'll be ready with either scenario.
I would imagine, based on how you guys have been playing over the last half of the season, it doesn't really matter where you play because you feel confident about how this team.
Yeah, you just find yourself, after you've done this long enough, to focus on the things you can control. And so, fortunately, we're in a position to be in the postseason. We know we're going to be playing a home game. Those are positives.
Initial thoughts on how the secondary did today?
Well, we'll look at the tape. I thought overall pretty well. We had some moving parts, and we had a handful of guys not going. We got a few guys back from injury. That was encouraging, and overall I was pleased.
So there's a couple games today where teams just you think they'd be blowing teams out, and it ends up being a close game, or they lose a game. How hard is it to come in week 17 with the stakes the way they are and put together a dominating?
Yeah, look, we're playing for a lot. I mean, I can't speak for the other games, but I felt like our players understood that. We wanted to get our 13th win. That's hard to do. So we felt like we took the approach all week where we were, really working on our edge, in preparation for when the postseason starts.
So what find if there's an advantage when you do have something to play for, you have something on the line in a game like this rather than having nothing?
Well, look, it's hard to play this game if you're not emotionally and physically ready. In other words, there's times when seeding's been established that that we've sat players, and that's a different picture. But I thought, look, from the minute we got here, I thought we handled it right. I thought our pregame was on point, and I felt like we were ready to play, and I was glad to see it.
Sean, what does it say about the NFC that you're 13-3, maybe the 3 seed?
Look, in 2006 we won 10 games. We were the 2 seed. So it varies sometimes.
You mentioned winning 13. I mean, how significant is that for you winning 13 games? It's hard to y'all done it back to back.
Just want to win more than we lose. You want to win each time you play, and I don't know that that's a certain benchmark goal. I think the first goal is winning your division. The second goal is getting the best possible seed you can get. And it's just hard to do in this league.
That's what I mean. This
Yeah.
back-to-back seasons, the consistency of winning that many games, it's very rarely done in the league.
Yeah. Listen, I was pleased with these guys, their effort. I couldn't, again, I thought it was, I thought we had a good week. We weren't in pads during the week, and yet our periods were crisp, and we got outside some. Yeah, that was important.
Comment on what you got out of Jericho coming down the stretch here.
Yeah, look, he made a heck of a catch today. He's got a big catch radius. Man, I love to see how he's playing right now. And last week he had a significant game, and a few weeks back prior to him, going out of the game, he was already had 2 touchdowns. So he's a big part of what we do.
Sean, can you comment on the play of the defense since that 49ers game? I mean, it was 48 points in that game.
Yeah, look,
and then
the guys are, all year long. I mean, that's one game against a real good team, but I think that, we've added a few pieces because of some injuries, but those guys have done well.
Heartbreaking news yesterday with the death of McCord.
Yeah, we're devastated, because there's so many ties. She was just so visible in around our program. I know how our players have reacted and our organization. Thoughts and prayers go out to her family. It was tough news. All of us, I think, in Louisiana felt the same way. You can't explain it. And having young children myself, you just you just pray for her family. It was really difficult news to get, and we got it yesterday. And holy cow! I don't know if there's anything else to say. It's just. Someone that, man, she was always smiling, always upbeat, and that's how I remember her and her job.
Any special birthday plans?
No. No. We'll fly back and get back hopefully in time to watch a little of the evening game and kind of go from there.
So were you looking at Payton Easton as maybe a competition there, or trying to need a breather after being off so much?
Well, look, I thought it was important to get both he and Larry. I didn't want to go into a playoff game with them, fresh off of an injury. I thought it was important for those guys to play today. I thought that was real important. And yeah, they're always competing. Nick's done a good job. So, but they couldn't play until they were healthy. They were cleared, and I thought it was important that they got in there, and we'll look at the film, see how they did.
I guess it would have been hard for Pete to play a full game just being off that long. Has it been 6 weeks?
Yeah, I'd have to go back. Yeah, I mean, and look, our plan was to rotate through those 3 players, and we were able to do that.
Sounds pretty refreshing to get a DPI challenge to go your way.
That's like a hard 8 in Vegas, huh? Right? That was nice. I thought it was the right ruling. I was appreciative of it. There's my birthday gift. Thank you.
All right, guys, locker room's open.
Welcome back into the New Orleans Saints postgame show presented by Verizon. You just heard from head coach Sean Payton after the Saints defeat the Carolina Panthers 42-10, and we'll be hearing from our own senior reporter John DeShazier here shortly. And Mike, he touched on it a little bit in that press conference, but how did we not talk about Alvin Kamara and those 2 big touchdowns at the beginning of the game?
Because it was so long ago.
Right.
The
starters are taken out.
It was kind of, the question of late was, where's Alvin? Where's Alvin? We said 4 touchdowns in his last 2 games, really the second half of the Titans game. I think you're starting to see in Latavius Murray running up the the middle,
Yeah.
you start getting, unlike, before when things were not strong, you start getting 3rd and 2s and 2nd and 4. There's a nice 6-yard burst by Murray out of the gate, and then Alvin just being Alvin with 4 touchdowns. I mean, he ended up with 39 yards. He only ran the ball 8 times, but Latavius had 17 carries. And so, I think, just getting him back into that end zone feel, I think, is a big key.
Absolutely. And we go over now to our own senior reporter, John DeShazier, with more information.
Well, Caroline, Mike, you heard Coach. He got his early birthday present. He got that overturned or instituted DPI after on the field. They called it just a pass breakup. So, fortunately for the Saints, they get that challenge going in their direction. But, you think about what's happened here with this team this season. It's really been a fairly remarkable season. They're 13-3, only the first time in franchise history they've had back-to-back 13-win seasons. And we came into this season, I've said it before, thinking, whether or not this team was going to have a hangover after the way they exited the playoffs last year. Obviously, that has not been the problem for this team this season. And you lose with Drew Brees for 5 games, go 5-0 in those games. So it really was a phenomenal finish and a phenomenal season throughout for this team, because we saw them find myriad ways to win games. Here today really established some early dominance on offense and defense. A.J. Klein with the pick 6, Drew Brees with a couple of touchdown passes, Alvin Kamara with a couple of touchdown runs. So we saw the well-roundedness of this team, and they had clean special teams play too. This is the way you want to be playing going into the playoffs. Would love to be a little bit healthier, obviously, so they'll see how that works out in terms of whether or not they're able to get a bye. Obviously, a bye would be helpful in terms of getting back some of those guys in that secondary. We're talking about Eli Apple and Marcus Williams, and also Von Bell at strong safety. So we'll see how that works out for this team. But, we saw some pretty good play out of that secondary today with P.J. Williams at safety, and we saw Janoris Jenkins filling in at cornerback. We saw DJ Swearinger go in, some at safety. So this team seems to have the right parts that it wants, but obviously you want to have your starters back. You didn't get any help from the Lions in terms of maybe going up to that number 2 seed and earning a playoff bye. So now the Saints will turn their eyes to the television tonight to see if Seattle gives them some help by beating the San Francisco 49ers, and that would allow the Saints to move up to the number 2 seed. But either way, they're going to have a home playoff game. This team is built to where they can win in, I believe, any venue, because again, the offense is going to be what they are. And right now they've scored 34 or more points in 6 of the last 7 games. A nice hot streak for the offense. You've seen what this team can do defensively at times. I think the one big defensive letdown this season was obviously the 48-46 home loss to San Francisco. But for the most part, this has been a pretty consistent defense this season in terms of whether it's yards allowed or points allowed. They've done a pretty good job of that this entire season. And, if you look at the special teams unit, top to bottom, I would say that the Saints have one of the better special teams units in the league in terms of you've got a Pro Bowl returner in Deontay Harris, you've got a Pro Bowl kicker in Will Lutz, and you've got a punter who very well could be in the Pro Bowl also in Thomas Morstead. So I think throughout this team is built to last, whether it's at home or on the road. Obviously, you'd love for it to be at home, but if they have to travel, this team looks like they're constituted as to a team that can win on the road. But right now, you don't worry about all that. You just soak in the victory, the 42-10 over Carolina here at Bank of America Stadium, because they came here with a purpose. People were wondering whether or not the Saints were going to play their regulars, whether or not they really were just giving lip service to the fact that they said they wanted to win. Well, the result on the field said they really wanted to go out and win this game by jumping out to that early 14-0 lead. Impressive, because last week they fell behind 14-0 after the first quarter and had to mount that comeback in that 38-28 win. And today they come out, establish the lead early, establish their dominance early, and really take it to a Carolina team that, look, they limped into this game. They had lost 7 straight, now it's 8 straight. They were on the 3rd quarterback of the season, Will Grier, a rookie, and the Saints took advantage of it. They made him look like a rookie early in this game, and then when Kyle Allen came in after they were able to get Grier out of the game with an injury, they still were able to do some nice things defensively in terms of keeping Carolina out of the end zone. They allowed some yards, 20-20, but they end up with an end zone pick by Janoris Jenkins at the end to really seal it up the way you want to seal it up defensively. So the Saints put on a pretty impressive show out here today. Again, Carolina was out there, and you have to mention, yes, they're a wounded team. Now lost 8 straight, but you still have to go out there and take care of business. You still have to go out there and put that team to rest and take care of winning the game, and the Saints did exactly that. So hopefully, if you're the Saints, obviously, now you turn your attention to tonight's game. You hope that Seattle can give you the help that Detroit wasn't able to in their game at home, and maybe Seattle is a little bit better equipped to do that. But either way, if you're the Saints, the bottom line is this, and you hate to say it this way, but it's a fact. The Saints had an opportunity to take care of that themselves, and they didn't win that San Francisco game, and now that's why they're in this position that they currently are in, where they could be 13-3 and the number 3 seed rather than 13-3 and the number 1 seed, or 14-2 and the number 1 seed. So we'll see how it shakes out later on, but they seem to be playing their best football heading into the playoffs. They seem to be on a crescendo as they enter the playoffs, and that's the only thing you can ask of the team. Then you got to take care of your business. You're going to have to beat a good team in order to advance anyway. You're going to have to beat a good team in order to get to the Super Bowl anyway. So the venue will not matter. You're still going to have to win against a really good team, and this Saints team seems to be a good enough team to win in any venue. So we'll see, Mike and Carolina, how they fare. We'll see what happens with tonight's game, but right now, Saints are 13-3. They've won a division championship for 3 consecutive years. They've got back-to-back seasons of 13 wins for the first time in franchise history, and those are things to be celebrated until they get to the playoff game.
All right, that was our own John DeShazier providing some lengthy insight on the Carolina Panthers game and, of course, the playoff picture for the Saints. Mike, JD touched on it a little bit in this Panthers game. Really a well-rounded game from everyone, and you have to think it gives them some confidence going into maybe not next week, but the week after that.
Right. I mean, they're scoring points. Defense is getting turnovers, holding, running backs. If you're still not allowed a 100-yard rusher. And I think if you looked at some of the numerical stats that I think Sean Payton would look at as impressive, what used to be 7, 8, 9 penalties a game today was 3.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
They're really not hurting themselves with penalties as I believe they did more earlier in the season. They've cleaned up that, and that takes a lot of pressure off of your offense and defense when you can do something like that. They swept Carolina for the second time in 3 years. They swept also Tampa. So really, for the first time since 2013, they sweep 2 of the 3 NFC South teams. And so that's, as Coach Payton said, that's what you do first. Mm-hmm. You do this chronologically, and you do all you can do to not have to play next week. They've done all they can do to not have to play next week. 13-3, it's happened before that a 13-3 has been a 3 seed, and it could happen again. But Seattle's at home. Tough place to play. Both teams have a lot to play for because of, you go. This was a weird kind of playoff scenario for Week 17. Here's what we knew in the NFC. Minnesota was the 6th seed. To be decided, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To be decided on the final Sunday. In the AFC, we knew the Ravens were 1. We knew the Bills were 5. The rest of it was all going to be decided today. So many things were going to be decided. So, somebody's going to be the 5th seed, and it's going to be the loser of tonight's game is either going to be the 2nd seed, or the 5th seed possibly, depending on how it all shakes out. So, very, very important games, and you would hate to see. And as John said, that victory over San Francisco would have changed a lot of things, but they were 7-1 on the road. Sean Payton has historically been tough on the road, and they can go anywhere and beat anybody at any time when they are as balanced as they have been of late, and scoring the kind of points that they were towards the end of the season that they really weren't doing early on.
Well, I can't help but think they were somehow battle-tested at the beginning of the season when you saw Drew Brees go out with that thumb injury. You had Teddy Bridgewater in at quarterback. You had, 3-4 road games in a row, and your defense came out and they stepped up in a big way. So it kind of seems like that was something that tested them for possibly going on the road now. And as you said, the venue, of course, you'd love to have it at home in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, but 7-1 in the road, I think we'll take it.
It was that trip west. They lose to the Rams, but they stay out there. They go to Washington State, practice, and then beat Seattle on the road to come back. And then they play Dallas at home. But I mean, that, for whatever reason, this happened a few years ago when they went to Miami. in London, had to play Miami in London, and
Yeah.
played Carolina, and for whatever you could look back to this moment of brought the team together for whatever reason, because they were just a different team. It felt like. You're right. They were battle tested at that point behind the play of Teddy Bridgewater, and to win those 5 games with Teddy at the helm, not easy games. The victory over Seattle, it's why we're having this discussion tonight about the Saints, where they are. But, so yeah, I do believe it is about, and we're waiting for Drew Brees, and when he comes to the podium, we'll certainly take you there. I do believe they have not hurt themselves. And we talked about penalties, and we talked about turnovers. They're plus 15. The Saints fumbled the ball in the regular season, lost 2 fumbles this year. 2 fumbles this year. That ties with the 2002 Kansas City Chiefs and the 2014 Minnesota Vikings for the fewest fumbles. And I'm just talking about regular season, so there's no jigs for the playoffs here. Some of the regular season, but they didn't hurt themselves. Not with a lot of picks, not with a lot of turnovers. And so you kept the ball, and as John talked about, now special teams, unbelievable. Thomas Morstead punted 6 times today. You look at the score, 42-10. You go, oh my gosh, Carolina must have punted 20 times. Carolina punted one more time than Thomas Morstead. But John's right. He had one of the best games ever.
All right, we're going to go ahead and let you watch some highlights from today's game. We'll be right back on the New Orleans Saints Postgame Show. Completely forgot.
As Brees can't find anyone, he backpedals, moves to his left, and now throws. It is complete, and Thomas is able to. 2nd down and 12 off the fake to Kamara. Brees sets up the screen, finds Kamara, and Alvin Kamara has another Saints first 1. Brees hands it off to Kamara, and he is in for his 2nd age. Grew up here in the Charlotte area. His first home start. It is picked off and taken in for a touchdown by the former Panther, A.J. Klein. Picked it up via penalty. Greer in trouble. Spun around. Down he goes. At the 7. Kamara lined up to the left of Brees. Brees to the end zone. Wide open. Is in at middle linebacker. And now Brees to the end zone. Back in 2013. Brees on 3rd and 7. It is complete for a first down to Taysom Hill. He's inside the 20, still going. The 10, the 5, to the...
All right, we'll be hearing from quarterback Drew Brees right now, actually, as we go to the podium.
Significance of going 13-3, how difficult that is to do in this league.
Yeah.
Back-to-back years.
Yeah. It's extremely difficult, and obviously it was a strong year in the NFC. There's a few other teams out there that are in that position. I think it's rare to be 13-3 and potentially be a 3 seed, right? That happened to us back in 2011, right? So a lot of strong teams out there. I think it says a lot about our guys. I mean, just down the stretch here, I think we've been an ascending team. We've been playing a little bit better each and every week, and despite the fact that we've had some guys go down, we've had young guys step up or go sign veteran guys that have come in and played well for us. That happened today on the defensive side of the ball. A couple guys in the secondary. But listen, our goal is you always want to be in a position where you can control your destiny, right? And I think we did that. We have positioned ourselves to where hopefully there's a chance that we can get a first round bye. But if not, then hey, we're preparing for whoever we're going to play this week, and here we go.
Drew, you feel like you guys are an ascending team. What do you like best about the way you've been playing lately?
Well, I think we've been balanced on offense. I think we've run the ball effectively. We've been efficient in the passing game. We've started making some bigger plays in the passing game. With different guys. And I think overall just efficiency. All the things that you pay attention to that equate to winning football, taking care of the football, third down percentage, red zone efficiency, all those things have been ticking up in the right direction, which is good. Defensively, those guys have been battling. Quite a few injuries, I think, over the last few weeks. Guys kind of, the lineup getting shuffled around, but guys stepping up, playing really well. I mean, played fantastic today, obviously, especially early on. And, for us to come on the road and win the way we have, I think, the last 2 weeks, I think it says a lot about the team. Understanding that, good chance we have to go on the road in the playoffs, right, and do the same thing. So I think it's good from a confidence perspective there.
Drew, you talked often this year about the catch radius of Jared Cook. And
Yeah.
he was talking about the back shoulder throw with the one hand.
Yeah.
He said, I didn't realize it was going to be that far behind you, but the fact that he made it look easy, it just kind of, you show us again just how, I guess, great player he is at the position, how he can do everything.
Yeah.
He keeps the offense moving.
Yeah. You said it, big catch radius, right? So, Eric Reed's a big safety, and that's the guy who's on him, and yet you still feel like there's places where you can throw the ball where he can get it, nobody else can. And I think he tracks the ball well and does some really good things down the field too. So, big play last week, big play, this week on some of those down the field throws, and obviously he's a big weapon for us.
Drew, you guys set the NFL record for fewest turnovers. Speaks to that efficiency, but 8
Yeah.
turnovers in a season seem pretty
Yeah.
preposterous.
I'd say that's probably the thing we're most proud of. When you talk about this offense, I think you talk about it being explosive, and you talk about these weapons and the pace at which we play, and just and so I think for us to be able to say that, yeah, and in addition to that, we also take very, very good care of the football. It's something we preach, it's something we work on, it's something that's always talked about and always stressed with what we do. So that number alone equates to a lot of winning football, right? And then you combine that with some of the other things we've talked about, the balance and the efficiency in situational football and scoring points when you get the opportunity. Those are good things.
With so much up in the air for playoff seeding, can you take a look at what objectives you had just for this game, things that you wanted to see happen, especially for the offense, for you guys to?
Well, we want to move the ball. We want to score points. We want to be efficient. We want to spread it around. We were able to do all those things, take care of the football, obviously, and then get the win. And get the win in a way where we felt like we got better today, and I think we did.
Drew, they showed his birthday. Does he acknowledge it at all? Did y'all even talk about it?
Yeah, they actually interrupted his post-game speech with kind of a song over the speakers in the locker room. It turns into club, whatever, in the locker room after the game, and so yeah, we had a song for Sean. Wish him a happy birthday.
Drew, how hard is it to, when everything's, you got those high stakes in the last game, the other team has something to play for it, to focus and bear down and get that type of win that you had today?
Yeah.
It didn't happen for everybody.
No, listen, it's there's obviously a lot of meaningful games, in this Week 16 for a lot of teams around the league, but especially I think in the NFC. And so, you watch the way that Green Bay Detroit game went today. It was Detroit jumped up big, and Green Bay kind of fought their way back, ended up kicking a last-second field goal to win. Obviously, big game tonight with Seattle and San Francisco. Those are games that affect us at this point. So, we'll be tuning in and seeing how it shakes out.
Drew, based on how you guys are playing this right now down the stretch, you feel like it doesn't matter? I know you'd rather be at home to make playoff games as possible. This team game translates anywhere?
Yeah, I like to think that. Listen, we if you look, I know a lot of people talk about the Superdome and obviously talk about us being a dome team, and bottom line is over the last 10 years, I think we've won more games than anybody except for the New England Patriots on the road. So I think that's saying something. I think it's saying something about our teams. I think it's saying something about the way that we're coached. I think it says a lot. And this year, we were 6-2 at home, 7-1 on the road. So bottom line is each road game presents its challenges, right? It's the crowd noise, it's the conditions, it's all those things that you kind of gauge, depending on where you go. But you have a plan for it, and this game is still about, energy and execution. And I feel like that's something that we've really done a great job with everywhere we've gone.
Drew, are you aware of what's going on in the Detroit-Green Bay game while you're out there playing?
Well, in the fourth quarter, you're starting to peak up at the thing when you feel like obviously we have the game in hand, and check that score, and then obviously we watched it in the locker room after the game, the finish there.
How good is this team? I mean, how good do you feel going into the playoffs about where you're at? You're relatively healthy, this time of the year as a roster. I mean, how do you feel? Are you ascending, ticking up?
I feel like we're an ascending team, and that's been something that we've talked about a lot over the last month, especially is the teams that really do well in the playoffs. I think are those teams that are playing their best football at that time, and even maybe taking a look at it and saying we can get a little bit better, each and every week. And again, I think when you look at our stretch of the last 5-6 weeks, I think that's the way it's been each and every week. It's just that emphasis of, how do we get better? How do we improve? How do we get ourselves into the form that we want to be in going into the playoffs? Not, hey, foot off the gas and relax, and then, once we get to the playoffs, we'll crank it up again. No, it doesn't work like that. You gotta be pedal to the metal.
How rare is it that just actually gather as a team and watch a game immediately?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you'd rather be in a situation where you totally control your own destiny, right? And maybe everybody's watching you, but you're obviously sitting there hoping for the result that's going to put you in a position to get a first round bye. And unfortunately, that didn't happen there. But there's still a chance, and we'll see how it plays out.
Do you guys turn the music up right after that and kind of go back to your celebration? We could just hear it come back up in this room.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we work hard so we can have fun, right? And obviously everybody did a great job today, and so that's part of, I think, what makes this team special and unique is the fact that we can have those moments together, we can enjoy those moments together, and we look forward to those. We work hard for those. So yeah, we cranked it up a little bit more, and then but now it's unfinished business.
I guess I meant after you guys were done watching the Packers game. I mean, after that it was out of control. So
After that it was more. Well, usually Sean would address the team right when we get in the locker room, but the game was on, so we watched it and then turned it down, allowed him to talk to us, and then we went on with our business.
How proud are you of this team, considering what you all been through the last few years? I mean, a lot of people said that you'll never get off the mat again.
Yeah.
Here you are.
No, listen, you go back to, well, listen, the full story hadn't been written yet, right? But 2017, the way that season ended, obviously, in Minnesota, and then bouncing back and putting ourselves in a position where we get to host the NFC Championship game last year, and then what happened there. I think it says a lot about this team. The grit, the determination, and the love for one another. That we continued to press on and believe that our best was yet to come, and hopefully it is.
Drew, just going back a little further than even coming back from 17, how about the 3 straight years where you didn't make the playoffs? Pretty impressive how this team has sort of rebuilt itself without ever getting the floor.
Yeah, listen, you guys have been around as long as I have, so we've had these conversations, but 14, 15, and 16 were tough years, tough years because I felt like we had built a level of expectation around here, right? And we had great leadership, and we just had a way of doing things, and felt like there was a big shift, in 14. Obviously, we lost a ton of leadership, and felt like things started turning in the wrong direction, and maybe we took for granted the fact that guys understood, what we were all about and what the foundation by which this organization had been built in the Sean Payton era, right? And so it took a little while to then go out and begin to assemble the pieces again, right, that would kind of create that new generation, moving forward, and reestablish the foundation, the culture, by which, we knew were conducive to winning. And I think you look at the results of that now over the last 3 years, what we've been able to accomplish, all the games we've been able to win, and how we've won them. It says a lot about the character, and the toughness, and the integrity, and the leadership of the guys that we've been able to go out and acquire, both through free agency, through the draft, says a lot about, I think, our organization and our guys like Mickey Loomis, right? Guys like Jeff Ireland, guys like Sean Payton, and others who've worked so hard to build that again. All right, guys.
All right, that was quarterback Drew Brees following the Saints' big win over the Carolina Panthers, 42-10 to end the season. 13-3. Obviously, everyone will be tuning into the game tonight between the 49ers and Seahawks to determine the playoff pictures for the rest of the year. Mike, you and I were talking about this earlier, and unfortunately yesterday you and I lost not only a colleague but a dear friend to us. And Mike, you had the pleasure of working with Carley over the last few years in the Superdome, working very closely with her. So you wanted to say something.
It's been rough, you know. I think even Sean Payton addressed it. It's just people still reeling from the news yesterday that a small plane crashed outside of Lafayette, killed 5 people. One of them being our friend Carley McCord. Who had worked for the Saints, worked for the Pelicans. We've worked on the entertainment side with her for the last 3 years, and she is such a talent that you really didn't get a chance to see it all the time. I mean, she would do high school games on Friday night. Right. Well, she would work a radio job during the day, and then for high school games on the sidelines Friday night, some college game for ESPN somewhere on Saturday, and be at the Dome at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, you know, ready for action and ready for the game. Never complained, always smiling, just fun, just a kick to be around. I mean, it's such a tragedy. I mean, there were 5 people that lost their lives. People on the ground, a woman taking donuts to her husband at the post office. One of the young men on the plane would have been 16 today, all going to LSU in Atlanta for that game. Her father-in-law is Steve Ensminger, who is the offensive coordinator. She's recently married, just so full of life and so much life ahead of her professionally. She was always asking, you know, what can I do to do more and get better? And I was like, gosh, you're doing fine. There's no other jobs out there. You're doing them already. You're doing them already. And it was a crushing day yesterday. And I know I spoke with members of the Saints entertainment team, the Saints organization and Pelicans, and really on behalf of the Saints and the Pelicans and all of us really in the state of Louisiana, our thoughts and prayers are with the families, all of those involved in yesterday's tragic accident. And I will tell you, Carley, my friend, you'll be missed greatly.